It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 92, printed in Part B of House Report 118-272. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 92, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-272, offered by Mr. Crane of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 864, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of my amendment, which reduces federal education funding by $37,735,000. This amendment maintains fiscal responsibility, protecting Americans' hard-earned tax dollars from going to waste at the Department of Education. According to Congressional Budget Office's estimation, this amendment would reduce allowances by $38 million and outlays by $30 million for FY24. Like many Americans, I don't trust the Biden administration with our tax dollars as they trample on our constitutional protections and allow violations of these protections on college campuses across the U.S. In Arizona, we're seeing the Department of Education impose a record-setting fine of $37,735,000 on Grand Canyon University. Foolishly, this fine is being imposed for something that the university has already been cleared of in a court of law. Adding insult to injury, they're imposing a record fine on GCU that would unjustly impede their ability to operate. As the largest private Christian university in the nation, GCU's enrollment has grown to an estimated 118,000 students because of their innovative approach to higher education. If GCU is forced to pay this fine, I believe the Department of Education should be defunded by the same amount. We the people are sick and tired of the woke indoctrination of our youth. I find it absurd that the Department of Education would target private Christian schools while ignoring the larger systemic issues within higher education. The cost of college tuition has skyrocketed 175% in the last 4 decades, far exceeding inflation rates. Meanwhile, the values of these degrees has not kept up. Despite the Supreme Court establishing that college and university campuses are not immune from the protections of the First Amendment, we're seeing a suppression of free speech rights on college campuses across the nation. 63% of students believe the political and social climate on their campus prevents people from freely expressing their opinions, an increase of almost 10% in the past 2 years. The University of Texas at Austin threatened to fire or penalize a professor who exposed the university's plans to ensure that new hires have uniformly left-wing views on cultural issues. Virginia Tech and other universities deploy teams that rely on students to snitch on classmates who express offensive views and then subject those classmates to investigations, re-education, or even discipline. Following the recent terror attack against Israel, we've seen anti-Semitism skyrocket at universities, especially at Ivy League institutions who reap the benefits of billions of taxpayer dollars. At Columbia, we saw a tenured professor describe the terrorism inflicted by Hamas upon Israelis as awesome and a stunning victory. We also saw more than 30 student groups at Harvard blame Israel for the terror attacks conducted by Hamas. To combat this infiltration of woke mind rot in our classrooms, Congress needs to pass a substantial funding reduction for the Education Department for fiscal year 24. My amendment is designed to mitigate and thwart the weaponization of the public education system against Americans. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I claim the time in opposition.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. The underlying bill already cuts program administration at the Department of Education by $77 million, or 18%. This amendment would slash another $38 million from this account, bringing the total cut to $115 million, or a stunning 27%. The program administration account funds the federal civil servants who provide grants to states. If your state's looking for a grant, these are the folks who are going to help you. To school districts, if your school district is looking for a grant, these folks are going to help you. And institutes of higher education. These staff answer the questions. They provide vital fundings to communities across the country. This amendment fits with others like it. Let's face it, and with the underlying bill where there's a 28% cut. The goal is to dismantle public education and higher education in the United States of America so that working people, middle-class families, vulnerable families have fewer economic opportunities, deny Americans the opportunity for an education. This amendment takes glee in breaking the Department of Education by decimating the non-political career staff that administers its vital programs. This is plain wrong. Vote no on this amendment, but let me just say this. This is another in the list of what I call the list of particulars taking public education to the graveyard. Now there's this new one right now by the gentleman from Arizona, but he had an earlier one which cuts education. This is it. This is his $38 million in cuts. We slash Pell Grant funding, eliminate funding to give out Pell Grants and collect student loans, eliminating funding for HBCUs, MSI, tribal colleges, TRIO, Gear Up, eliminates education research funding, eliminating the salary of the education secretary, and now this on top of the underlying bill with a 28% cut. Do I make my point? The Republican majority is looking to eliminate public education in the United States of America. Not a very noble goal. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves the balance of time. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Again, this issue has already been settled in federal court. In January, the 11th Circuit Court found GCU innocent of the charges ED is using to impose this record-setting fine. What right do bureaucrats have to overrule our judicial system? This is a multi-million-dollar fine we're talking about, the largest penalty ever handed down by the Education Department. I want to repeat that. This issue has already been settled in federal court. I reserve.
Reserves. Gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
I continue to be opposed to this as amendment, but we keep hearing about Grand Canyon University, 86,000 students online. I would once repeat that the nonprofit, but they deal with for-profit companies, and what they do is they're ripping off students, ripping them off. That's something that we need to really take a very hard look at, because they are predators with young people. They make a ton of money, and they don't provide the services, the education, or the opportunities for employment after that. There are people here who are all over these so-called nonprofits who are really in league with profit-making companies that are raking in tons of dollars at the expense of our students. I oppose the amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting that my colleague on the other side says that Grand Canyon University is ripping people off. If that's the case, why didn't the 11th Circuit Court find GCU guilty? That's not what happened at all. My colleague on the other side of the aisle is not the judge, the jury, okay? Like I said, the 11th Circuit Court already found GCU innocent. My colleague also said that there's only 87,000 students at GCU. There's 118,000 students because of their innovative approach to higher education. We are very proud of this. We are very proud of this college in Arizona. I reserve.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from